The Cold Room in Berlin. The year is 1884. In Berlin, the winter is biting, but inside the chancellery of Otto von Bismarck, the air is thick with the smell of cigar smoke and expensive ink. 14 men sit around a horseshoe-shaped table. They are the representatives of the world's most powerful empires: Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, and Belgium. On the wall hangs a map of Africa. To these men, it is not a map of civilizations, ancient kingdoms, or families. It is a map of a blank space, a treasure chest waiting to be pried open. Here is the most chilling fact: not a single African leader was invited. No sultan, no king, no representative of the millions whose lives were about to be signed away. This was the Berlin Conference. It was the moment the scramble for Africa was turned from a chaotic race into a legalized, systematic heist. In this documentary, we explore the General Act of 1885, the document that killed a continent's sovereignty, and how, in 2026, Africa is finally erasing those lines. The three C's, the motive. Why Africa? Why then? By 1884, Europe was in the grip of the Second Industrial Revolution. Their factories were starving. They needed rubber for the tires of the new automotive age. They needed palm oil to lubricate the gears of massive steam engines. They needed gold, diamonds, and copper to justify this to their citizens back home. They created the myth of the three C's: commerce, Christianity, and civilization. They claimed they were going into the dark continent to bring light. But history shows the light they brought was the flash of gunpowder. The Berlin Conference was a corporate merger disguised as a humanitarian mission. The legal weapon, the General Act. This is the core evidence. The conference produced a document called the General Act of 1885. This was the instruction manual for the theft of Africa. Article 34, the notification rule. It stated that any European power that took a piece of land had to notify the others. It turned land grabbing into an international game of finders, keepers. Article 35, effective occupation. This was the most devastating clause. It said a claim on paper wasn't enough. You had to prove you could effectively occupy the land. This meant you had to build forts, station soldiers, and enforce tax laws. This rule mandated violence. If a European power didn't move into the interior to crush local resistance, their rival would. It forced the scramble to become a stampede. The resistance, fire, and blood. The history books often make it look like Africa was taken easily. That is a lie. The effective occupation rule was met with a firestorm of resistance. In Ethiopia, Emperor Menelik II saw the Berlin map and refused to be a pawn. In 1896, at the Battle of Adwa, his modernized army crushed the Italian invaders. It was the first time in the modern era an African nation had defeated a European power in a full-scale war. In West Africa, the Asante Queen Mother Asantewaa led the War of the Golden Stool against the British. For centuries, these kingdoms fought back. The Berlin Conference drew the lines. But African blood defended the soil. The I-shaped cage infrastructure. Look at a map of African railroads today, in 2026. You will notice something strange. They don't connect cities to cities. They connect mines to ports. This is the infrastructure cage of the Berlin Conference. The rails were built in an I shape to drain the continent. They were never meant to help Africans trade with each other. This is why, even today, it is often more expensive to ship a container from Lagos to Accra than from Lagos to London. The geography of extraction was baked into the dirt by the men. In Berlin, the artificial borders. The borders of Africa are a crime against geography. In Berlin, diplomats used rulers and protractors to draw straight lines. They split the Yoruba people between British Nigeria and French Dahomey. They split the Somalis between 5 different colonial jurisdictions. These straight lines ignored 1,000 years of ethnic, linguistic, and cultural history. The result? Decades of border wars and identity crises that the continent is still healing from in 2026. The 2026 Renaissance, erasing the map. How do you undo 1884? You make the borders irrelevant. In 2026, we are witnessing the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA. Africa is finally building grid infrastructure railways that connect east to west, not just north to south. We see the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPSS, allowing trade in local currencies, bypassing the US dollar and the euro. By creating a borderless Africa, the youth of 2026 are effectively burning the General Act of 1885. They are saying, "You divided us to conquer us. We will unite to thrive." Conclusion: the lion speaks. The Berlin Conference was a moment of supreme arrogance. It was a group of hunters deciding how to divide a lion they hadn't even caught yet. But as the proverb goes, until the lion has his own storyteller, the hunter will always have the best part of the story. This document is the lion's story. It is the factual proof of the theft, but also the blueprint for the recovery. Africa in 2026 is no longer a victim of the map. It is the architect of its own destiny. The lines drawn in 1884 are fading. The future of Africa is being written by Africans. For Africans, we are going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery because, whilst others might free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind. Mind is your only ruler, sovereign. The man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be the slave of the other man who uses his mind.